Hey, welcome. So, have you ever thought, yeah, I want my student loans canceled? Have you ever thought about how much that would cost? I mean, if you take a look at what we've got right here, we've got about $1.75 trillion in student loan debt. And where's that money going to come from if you cancel it? So, first, let's look at some of the statistics. We've got 1 in 4 Americans who have student loan debt, so about 44, 45 million Americans. The average debt per person is 37,000, and their monthly payment is $393. So, if we look at this and we say, okay, well, let's say on average these loans are being held for 10 years. So you're paying $393 for 10 years. It's like a 10-year car loan. That's awful. You have 10 years, $393, and you ask yourself, Americans can't afford that? Well, I guess they can't because clearly everyone's griping about student loan cancellation. And it's all because of the very small amount of people who have debt and can't pay it off. And because anytime you have a system where there's a small amount of people suffering, no one is going to accept the fact that everyone else is doing fine. They're going to base it off of the fact that not very many people are doing well, even though it's only a small amount of people who aren't doing well with these student loans. And so, if you have it for 10 years, $393 a month, that should be fine. For a very small portion of Americans, it's not, and they end up, forbearancing on their loans, and then that increases the amount of interest that they accrue, and the more interest that's added on top, the higher the amount that they owe, and they have to refi all this weird crap, and it just gets overwhelming, and they don't get to use their degree for what they want to use it for, and they can't pay it back. And so that's why we have this issue today where we want to cancel student loans, because there's a small majority of people who can't pay it back. And then you've got people who don't want to pay it back, right? I mean, I would love my student loans to get canceled, but let's find out what it would take for that. Okay. So I went to taxfoundation.org, and as you can see, in 2017, 143 million taxpayers reported $10.9 trillion in income and paid 1.6 trillion. Okay, so if we look at this and we say we want to cancel student loan debt, we don't even make enough money in taxes to do that. And that's not counting everything else we have to fund on top of that. So government operations, the defense bill, all this other stuff that we have to pay for is not included, will not be included with the student loan cancellation. So if we want to pay off student loans, how are we going to pay off student loans if the government doesn't even make enough money to pay it off in the first place? Well, you would have to increase taxes, right? And so if we look at this based off of the numbers, I can take a calculator, 1.6 divided by 10.9, and that's so an average American is being taxed around 15%. Okay? So in order to pay it off instantly, which wouldn't happen, but if it did happen, we would have to double the amount we pay in taxes, which is insane. You would never do that. So you would do it over time, right? Well, what if we increase taxes by maybe like 300 billion? $300 billion. So what's 300 billion? So 0.3 divided by 10.9. So we would have to increase taxes by 3% on average for every American to pay off the debt in $300 billion increments. And if we have, $1.6 trillion divided by zero point 0.3, that will take about five and one third of a year. 5 years and a third of a year. Oh my gosh, I can't speak English. Anyways, it would take about a little over 5 years to pay off student loans. That's pretty reasonable, but no one likes tax raises. No one likes to buff up the taxes. And unfortunately, that's what's going to have to happen, because how else are you going to pay off so many student loans in this amount? And honestly, the taxes don't have to stay forever. But we can't trust the government to do that, to do a temporary tax that for only 5 years. It's not how our government works. And so we're kind of stuck with it, unfortunately. There's no way out besides people taking over their finances and actually, paying off their student loan debt faster than whatever is being prescribed to them. You don't have to pay the minimum payment. You can always pay more than the minimum payment. There's no rule or law against it. Is paying off student loans a good idea? Instantly, no, not a good idea. If we can do it over time with a temporary tax buff increase, then maybe it would be a good idea. But unfortunately, it's just not in the cards because you're adding 1.6, $1.7 trillion to the balance sheet instantly, and you're going to get the same effect that we saw this year and last year with inflation. So there's the only way to go about it is to pay it off over time, increasing people's taxes, and maybe that's just the way that it has to be now. Maybe we have to pay a certain tax for colleges, and maybe we can't rely on private institutions to make the best decisions for themselves when it comes to putting young Americans in a financial position that they don't understand quite yet. Because for me, especially when I took out student loans, I had no idea how it would impact my finances. And now I'm working to pay them off because they're just a hindrance in my financial well-being. And so if people don't realize that and they don't pay off their student loans, we're just going to see the number keep growing. And the government's plan was to make money off of it. And we'll see if that keeps going, if that keeps staying in effect. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.